The ship came out of hyperspace with a gentle shudder. An ambassador pressed her hand against the cold window of her cabin. Before her, floating in the endless black of space, was the largest structure she had ever seen. The Eternal Accord, the great station where the Galactic Council met to decide the fate of entire worlds. Was 43 years old. She had spent 20 years as a diplomat, solving problems between nations that hated each other. She had stopped wars. She had built bridges between enemies, but nothing in her long career had prepared her for this moment. Humanity had discovered faster-than-light travel only 15 years ago. In that short time, they had spread to a dozen nearby star systems, built colonies, and made contact with alien traders at the edge of known space. Those traders had told them about the Council, 12 ancient species who had ruled the galaxy for thousands of years. They controlled trade. They made laws. They decided who could expand and who could not. Earth had sent to ask for one simple thing: peace, a place at the table, a chance to prove that humans could be good neighbors in this vast and strange universe. She looked at the photograph on her desk. 3 faces smiled back at her. Her husband of 18 years, Sophia, her daughter, who had just turned 16, and little Daniel, only 9 years old, who had cried when she left and made her promise to come back soon. "I promise," she had told him. "Mama always comes back." The door to her cabin opened, and Captain stepped inside. He was a tall man with gray hair and kind eyes. He had commanded the diplomatic vessel Hope's Light for this historic mission. "Ambassador, we're receiving docking instructions," he said. "The Council has granted us permission to approach." Stood and straightened her formal uniform. It was dark blue with gold trim, designed to look dignified but not threatening. Earth's leaders had spent months deciding on every detail of this mission: the color of her clothes, the words she would speak, the gifts she would offer. "How does the station look?" she asked. Paused before answering. "Big, very big, and there are a lot of ships out there, hundreds of them, maybe thousands." Nodded. She had expected this. The galaxy was old and humanity was very young. They were children walking into a room full of adults. She had to show respect. She had to show humility, but she also had to show strength. "Let's not keep them waiting," she said. The Hope's Light moved slowly toward the station. Watch from the observation deck as the massive structure grew larger and larger. It was shaped like a wheel, spinning slowly to create gravity. Lights glittered across its surface like stars. Ships of every size and shape floated around it, coming and going through dozens of docking ports. Tried to count the different types of vessels. She recognized some from the information Earth had gathered. The long, elegant ships of the blocky, armored cruisers of the strange, organic-looking vessels of the. Each species had its own style, its own technology, its own history stretching back thousands of years. And here was humanity, one small ship carrying one woman with a dream of peace. The docking process took an hour. Used that time to review her notes one final time. She had memorized the names of all 12 Council species. She had studied their customs, their beliefs, their fears. She knew that the considered direct eye contact a sign of challenge. She knew that the respected strength above all else. She knew that the communicated partly through scent and might find human smells offensive. So many details, so many ways things could go wrong. A young officer approached her with a tablet. "Ambassador, we're receiving a lot of communications traffic. The news networks across the galaxy are talking about our arrival." "What are they saying?" The officer hesitated. "Mixed reactions, ma'am. Some species seem curious about us. Others," he trailed off. "Others what?" "They're calling us. They say we come from a planet of monsters." Had heard this term before. Earth, by galactic standards, was an extreme world. High gravity, extreme weather, predators around every corner, diseases that could kill in hours, earthquakes, volcanoes, hurricanes, and floods. Most species in the galaxy evolved on gentle worlds with stable climates and few dangers. To them, Earth was a nightmare, and the creatures that survived there were something to fear. "Let them talk," said. "We'll show them who we really are." The Hope's light settled into its docking port with a soft clang, gathered her small team. There were only 5 of them. Herself, 2 aides, a translator, and a single security officer who had been ordered to carry no weapons. They wanted to show they came in peace. The airlock opened and stepped onto the Eternal Accord. The smell hit her first. It was strange and complex, a mixture of scents from a dozen different species. The air was thinner than she was used to and slightly cold. The gravity felt lighter, which made her feel oddly strong. A delegation was waiting for them, 12 figures, one from each council species. They were tall and short, scaled and furred, with eyes of every color and bodies of every shape. Had studied pictures of them, but seeing them in person was something else entirely. At the front of the group stood a. He was nearly 8 feet tall, with pale blue skin and 4 arms. His eyes were large and golden, and they looked at with an expression she could not read. He wore robes of deep purple, decorated with symbols of authority. "I am High Arbiter," he said. His voice was translated instantly by the device in his ear. "I speak for the Galactic Council. You are the human called." It was not a question. Noticed he did not use her title. "I am Ambassador," she said carefully, "representing the United Nations of Earth. I bring greetings from the 8 billion people of my world, and I thank the Council for this opportunity to speak." His eyes moved up and down, studying her like she was an insect. "We have heard of your species. You come from a world of death, a world where creatures eat each other to survive, where poison falls from the sky and the ground shakes with fire. Earth can be harsh," admitted, "but it has also made us strong and adaptable. We have learned to work together to overcome challenges. That is why we seek friends among the stars. Together, we can accomplish great things." There was a sound from somewhere in the delegation. Thought it might be laughter, but she could not be sure. Gestured with one of his 4 arms. "Come, the Council will hear your words." They walked through corridors that seemed to go on forever, kept her head high and her steps confident, even though her heart was pounding. She noticed that the other species kept their distance from her, as if she carried a disease. Some of them whispered to each other in languages her translator could not catch. The council chamber was enormous. It was a circular room with seats rising in tiers around a central platform. Each section was designed for a different species, with different kinds of chairs and different atmospheric conditions. Some areas were filled with water. Others were extremely hot or extremely cold. The diversity of life was incredible. Was led to the center platform. She stood alone under the gaze of thousands of alien eyes. Took his place in the highest seat, looking down at her from above. "You may speak, human." Took a deep breath. This was the moment she had prepared for, the moment that would define humanity's place in the galaxy. "Honored members of the Galactic Council," she began, "I stand before you as a representative of a young species. We have traveled among the stars for only a short time. We have much to learn from the great civilizations gathered here." She paused, letting her words settle. "But we also have much to offer. Humans are curious. We are creative. We adapt and overcome. We have built great cities and works of art. We have composed music that moves the soul and written stories that have lasted for thousands of years." From her bag, she produced a small device. It projected an image into the air above her. A beautiful picture of Earth, blue and green and full of life. "This is our home," she said. "Some call it but to us, it is the cradle of everything we are. It taught us that life is precious. It taught us that survival requires cooperation. It taught us that even the smallest creature can change the world." She changed the image. Now it showed humans helping each other, doctors treating the sick, farmers growing food, scientists making discoveries, children playing and laughing. "We do not come to conquer. We do not come to take. We come offering friendship. trade, cultural exchange, mutual defense against common threats. We ask only for a chance to prove ourselves worthy of standing beside you." Put away the device and stood with her hands open. "We know we are new. We know we are different. But we believe that difference makes us stronger, not weaker. We hope you will give us the opportunity to show you who we truly are." She stopped speaking and waited. The chamber was completely silent. Then spoke. "You speak well for a primitive, but words are easy. Actions reveal truth." "Then let us show you through our actions," said. "Give us trade agreements. Let your people visit our worlds and our people visit yours. In time, you will see that we mean what we say." Leaned forward. "We have studied your species, human. Your history is written in blood, war after war after war. You slaughter each other over small patches of ground, over ideas, over nothing at all. Your world produces soldiers the way other worlds produce grain." Felt the trap closing around her, but she kept her voice calm. "We have made mistakes. Every species has, but we have also learned from them. We have not had a major war in over 60 years. We have united our planet under one government. We are ready to move forward." "Forward to what?" Another voice spoke. It came from a section of the chamber filled with darkness. Could not see the speaker. "Forward to spread across the galaxy like a disease. Forward to take what you want because you are too strong to stop." "No," said firmly. "Forward to cooperation, forward to peace." Held up one of his hands and the chamber fell silent again. "We will consider your request, human. But first, we must conduct an investigation. Your ship will be searched. Your communications will be examined. If we find any evidence of hostile intent, there will be consequences." Nodded. She had expected this. The Hope's light carried nothing but diplomatic materials. There was nothing to find. "We welcome any inspection," she said. "We have nothing to hide." The next several days were difficult. Was given quarters on the station, but she was not allowed to leave them freely. Guards stood outside her door at all hours. Her communication with Earth was heavily monitored. Her team was questioned separately, again and again, about their true intentions. She did her best to stay positive. She spoke with any alien willing to listen, explaining humanity's hopes and dreams. A few seemed genuinely curious. A young engineer asked her about human music, and she spent an hour playing songs from her personal collection. A scientist wanted to know about Earth's diverse ecosystems, and she showed him pictures of rainforests and deserts and oceans. But most of the aliens she met regarded her with suspicion or contempt. They had already made up their minds about humanity. On the fifth day, everything changed. Was summoned to the council chamber without warning. She was not given time to prepare or contact her team. Guards escorted her through corridors filled with watching eyes. Something was wrong. She could feel it in the air. When she arrived at the chamber, it was packed. Every seat was filled. Cameras floated through the air, recording everything. This was being broadcast to the entire galaxy. Stood at his podium, looking down at her with those golden eyes. In his hand was a data tablet. "Of Earth," he announced, his voice echoing through the chamber. "Our investigation is complete. We have found evidence of espionage." His blood ran cold. "That is not possible. We have done nothing wrong." "We discovered hidden files in your ship's computer," continued. "Maps of our defensive positions, communications intercepts, plans for invasion." "Those files do not exist," said. "This is a lie. You have fabricated this evidence." Ignored her. "The Galactic Council finds you guilty of crimes against the peace. The sentence is death." Heard screaming. It took her a moment to realize it was coming from her team, being held back by guards at the edge of the chamber. She saw Captain fighting against alien hands, shouting her name. "This is wrong," cried. "I came here in peace. I came here for peace." "You came here to spy," said. "You came here to prepare for war. And now your species will learn its place in this galaxy." Stood tall even as her legs trembled. She looked directly at, breaking the custom she had studied so carefully. She no longer cared. "You are making a terrible mistake," she said quietly. "Humanity wanted to be your friend. We came offering everything we had. If you do this, you will create an enemy like nothing you have ever faced." Smiled. It was a cold, cruel expression. "Your species has existed for the blink of an eye. You have a handful of ships and a few small colonies. You are nothing. You are less than nothing. And after today, every primitive species in the galaxy will know better than to challenge the Council." He raised his hand. Thought of her children. Sophia with her mother's stubbornness and her father's laugh. Daniel, who was afraid of the dark and slept with a shape like a star. She had promised to come home. She had promised. The beam hit her before she could say another word. There was a flash of light, a moment of heat, and then was gone. No body, no remains, just empty air where a woman had stood. The chamber erupted in cheers. Aliens from every species celebrated the death of the human spy. They congratulated themselves on protecting the galaxy from the threat. They called a hero. On the Hope's light, Captain fell to his knees and wept. The guards had released him now. There was no point holding him anymore. He had watched the woman he had sworn to protect die in front of him, and he had been powerless to stop it. "Get us out of here," he whispered to his crew. "Get us home." The ship undocked slowly, carefully, still surrounded by hostile vessels. No one stopped them. The Council wanted them to leave. They wanted them to carry the message back to Earth. 17 hours later, the transmission reached humanity. It was midnight in Geneva when the screens lit up. Leaders around the world watched as was accused, condemned, and executed. They watched as the aliens cheered. They watched as smiled. In a small house in Argentina, a man named watched his wife die. Beside him, his daughter Sophia screamed and threw herself at the screen. His son Daniel just stared, not understanding, asking when Mama was coming home. Around the planet, 8 billion humans saw the same thing. They saw one of their own murdered for the crime of asking for peace. They saw aliens celebrate like they had won a great victory. And something changed. Something broke inside humanity that night. Or maybe something finally came together. Old enemies looked at each other with new eyes. Ancient conflicts suddenly seemed pointless. Borders that had divided nations for centuries became invisible lines on a map. Because there was only one border that mattered now. The border between Earth and everything else. The galaxy had wanted to send humanity a message. They wanted humans to know their place. They wanted them to feel small and afraid and helpless. But they did not understand what they had done. They did not understand who they were dealing with. In the deepest bunkers and the highest towers, in military bases and government buildings, in homes and schools and hospitals, the same thought echoed through every human mind. They had killed. They had cheered. They would pay. The silence began within hours of the broadcast. On the Galactic Trade Network, human merchants stopped responding to messages. Contracts worth billions of credits went unanswered. Ships that had been traveling toward alien ports suddenly changed course and headed home. Communication channels that had buzzed with human voices went dark. At first, the galaxy thought nothing of it. The primitives were scared. They were running home to hide. It was exactly what the Council had wanted. But then the silence spread. Human colonies that had been open to visitors closed their borders. Survey ships stopped exploring. Scientific stations packed up their equipment and left. Within a week, there was not a single human vessel operating outside of human-controlled space. High Arbiter received reports of this withdrawal with satisfaction. He stood in his private chambers aboard the Eternal Accord, looking out at the stars he had helped rule for 3 centuries. They understand now, he told his advisors. They know their place. In a generation, they will forget this ever happened. They will come crawling back, begging for trade agreements, and we will give them whatever scraps we choose. His advisors agreed. Of course they agreed. They always did. But not everyone shared confidence. In the lower levels of the station, a young named studied everything he could find about humanity. He was a historian, specializing in the rise and fall of civilizations. Something about the human response troubled him. "They are too quiet," he muttered to himself, scrolling through data on his screen. "When we crushed the rebellion, they screamed and pleaded for 50 years before they finally submitted. When we defeated the Hollow Fleet, the survivors scattered and fought guerrilla wars for centuries. But the humans—" He pulled up a map of human-controlled space. Every light that had once shown activity was now dark. Every ship was accounted for. Every colony was locked down. It was as if humanity had simply turned itself off. "This is not fear," whispered. "This is something else." On Earth, the world's leaders gathered in an underground facility beneath the Swiss Alps. It was a place built for surviving nuclear war, for continuing government in the face of total destruction. It had never been used before. Now it was full. Fleet Admiral James stood at the center of the room, surrounded by generals and presidents, prime ministers and kings. He was 62 years old, a tall man with dark skin and silver hair. He had served in 3 different navies before the nations of Earth merged their militaries into one force. He had fought in the last human war, the brief and bloody conflict that had finally convinced humanity to unite. He had hoped he would never fight again. He had been wrong. "The situation is simple," he said, his voice calm and steady. "Ambassador was murdered. The Council made this decision together. They broadcast it to the entire galaxy. They celebrated it. This was not an accident. This was not a mistake. This was a message." He paused, looking around the room. Every face was hard. Every eye was burning. "They want us to submit. They want us to accept our place as a lesser species. They believe we are too weak, too young, and too small to challenge them." He let those words hang in the air for a moment. "They are wrong." President Wei of the United Earth Government stepped forward. She was a small woman with gray hair and steel in her eyes. She had been elected on a platform of peaceful expansion into the galaxy. That dream was dead now. "What do you propose, Admiral?" she asked. Touched a control on his tablet, and a holographic display filled the center of the room. It showed the galaxy, with human space highlighted in blue and Council territory in red. The blue was tiny. The red covered almost everything. 12 species, said. Thousands of worlds, millions of ships, trillions of soldiers. By every measure, they are stronger than us. If we fight a conventional war, we will lose. "Then what do you suggest?" asked General of the Asian Defense Force. Change the display. Now it showed a single word. Erasure. "We do not fight a war," he said. "We end species. We destroy worlds. We make it so that nothing remains of those who murdered our ambassador. Not their cities, not their monuments, not their memories. We erase them from existence." The room was silent. Even hardened military officers looked uncomfortable. "This is genocide," someone said quietly. Turned toward the voice. It was a young aide, barely 30 years old. "Yes," said simply. "It is, and I do not say this lightly. I have spent my life trying to prevent exactly this kind of war, but the Council has made their intentions clear. They see us as a threat to be contained or destroyed. If we do not act, they will come for us. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but eventually they will decide that humanity is too dangerous to exist, and they will try to exterminate us." He looked around the room again. "We have a choice. We can wait for them to come, growing stronger while they grow worried. Or we can strike first, before they realize what we are capable of. We can make an example so terrible that no species will ever dare raise a hand against humanity again." President stepped forward. "And the innocent civilians on those worlds, the children who had nothing to do with the Council's decision." His face was stone. "Ambassador had 3 children. One of them called me crying last night, asking why the aliens killed his mother. I had no answer for him." He paused. War is cruel. It is always cruel. But if we show mercy now, if we hold back, the Council will see it as weakness. They will recover. They will regroup. And they will finish what they started. The debate went on for hours. Some argued for a limited response. Others wanted diplomacy. A few even suggested surrender. But in the end, there was only one question that mattered. Every person in that room had watched die. Every person had seen the aliens cheer. And every person knew that it could have been them. Could have been their wife, their husband, their son, their daughter. The vote was unanimous. President stood and addressed the room. From this moment, the United Earth government authorizes Directive 0. All military forces are to prepare for total war. The goal is not victory. The goal is extinction. No negotiation, no surrender, no mercy. She looked at, "Admiral, the fleet is yours, make them pay." Saluted, "Yes, ma'am." The next 3 months were the busiest in human history. On the surface, nothing changed. Human space remained dark and quiet. The colonies stayed silent. The ships stayed hidden. But beneath the surface, humanity was transforming itself into a weapon. Shipyards hidden inside asteroids worked around the clock. They did not build elegant ships like the or armored cruisers like the. They built machines designed for one purpose: destruction. The vessels were ugly and efficient, packed with weapons that pushed the boundaries of human science. Scientists who had spent their careers studying peaceful applications of technology now focused on death. They developed new bombs that could crack the crust of a planet. They created viruses that could target specific alien biologies. They designed weapons that could destroy entire fleets in seconds. And they did it all in secret. Admiral established his headquarters in a station hidden in the outer reaches of the solar system. From there, he coordinated the greatest military buildup in human history. He brought together the best officers from every nation. He trained them not in conventional tactics, but in total war. The Council fights wars with rules, he told his commanders. They negotiate before battle. They accept surrenders. They allow civilians to evacuate. They believe in honor and tradition. He slammed his fist on the table. We believe in victory. Nothing else matters. Nothing else exists. We will use every weapon, every tactic, every dirty trick we can think of. We will not stop until every world that voted for death is burning. Commander listened to his words and felt something cold settle in her heart. She was 40 years old, a veteran of the United Earth Navy. She had joined the service because she believed in exploration and discovery. She had never expected to become an instrument of genocide. But then she thought about the video. She had watched it 17 times. She had memorized every detail. The way had stood tall even when she was afraid. The way had smiled. The way the aliens had cheered. Had never met personally, but she felt like she had. Every human had died for all of them. She had died because she believed in peace, and the galaxy had laughed at her. Now the galaxy would learn a different lesson. Was assigned to command the Vengeance Fleet, a group of 200 warships designed specifically for planetary assault. Her flagship was the UES Retribution, a massive vessel bristling with weapons that had never been tested in combat. In her quarters, she kept a screen that played execution on a loop, not because she enjoyed watching it, but because she never wanted to forget why she was fighting. The training was brutal. Crews worked 18-hour days, running simulation after simulation. They practiced attacking planets and orbital stations. They drilled on how to destroy evacuation ships and refugee convoys. They learned to ignore surrender signals and distress calls. Some of the younger officers struggled with this. They had joined the Navy to protect people, not to slaughter them. A few broke down completely and had to be relieved of duty. But most of them hardened. Most of them watched the video and remembered. Most of them understood that this was not a normal war. This was survival. Humanity or the galaxy. Only one could remain. In the corridors of the Eternal Accord began to notice something strange. Human traitors had not returned. Human diplomats had not come begging for forgiveness. The human colonies remained closed and silent. "Perhaps they are building their defenses," one of his advisors suggested, "preparing for an attack." Laughed, "With what? A few dozen ships, a handful of colonies. They could work for 1,000 years and never match our power. No, they are simply sulking. Give them time, they will return." But weeks passed, and the silence continued. Other council members began to ask questions. The wanted to send scouts into human space. The suggested a diplomatic mission. Even the neutral species were curious about what was happening. Refused every suggestion. "We will not dignify them with attention. They are beneath notice. Let them play their games in their tiny corner of the galaxy. Eventually, they will understand that resistance is pointless." On a small moon orbiting a gas giant, far from any trade routes, an observation post picked up an unusual signal. It was faint and scrambled, but it seemed to be coming from human space. The officer on duty reported it to his superiors, who reported it to their superiors, who eventually sent a message to the council. The message was dismissed as sensor error. 3 months after its execution, Admiral stood on the bridge of his flagship, the UES Unity. Around him, the largest fleet humanity had ever assembled hung in the darkness of space. 8,000 ships, crewed by 2 million soldiers. Every vessel was loaded with weapons. Every soldier was ready to die. Looked at the faces of his bridge crew. They were young and old, from every nation on Earth. They had left their families behind, knowing they might never return. They had accepted a mission that would make them monsters in the eyes of the galaxy. But they had also accepted something else, a purpose, a unity that humanity had never achieved before. For the first time in history, there were no Americans or Chinese or Brazilians or Nigerians. There were only humans. "Ladies and," said, "I want you to understand what we are about to do. We are going to kill billions of living beings. We are going to destroy civilizations that have existed for thousands of years. We are going to commit acts that history may never forgive." He paused, letting his words sink in. "But we are also going to send a message that will echo through eternity. We are going to teach the galaxy that humanity is not to be touched. Not ever. Not by anyone. The price of harming a human being will be so terrible, so absolute, that no species will ever dare pay it again." He activated the fleet-wide communication system. Every ship in the Armada would hear his next words. "They think they know what humans are capable of. They studied our biology. They measured they counted our ships. But they forgot to study our history. They forgot what we do when someone takes one of ours." His voice rose. "We are the species that survived ice ages and plagues. We are the species that climbed mountains and crossed oceans. We are the species that split the atom and walked on the moon. We do not surrender. We do not forgive. And we never, ever forget." He pointed toward the stars. "Out there the galaxy is waiting. They think we are coming to fight. They think this is a war, but they are wrong. We are not coming to fight. We are coming to erase. Every world that voted for death, every species that cheered, every leader who smiled." His hand closed into a fist. "In 3 days we will reach space. We will begin with the world of IV. It is an agricultural planet, 4 billion inhabitants. They grow food for the hegemony." He lowered his hand. "When we are finished, it will be a graveyard. And then we will move to the next world, and the next. And we will not stop until they are a memory, until the council is ash, until every species in this galaxy understands that humanity is not to be touched." The bridge was silent. Every officer stood at attention, faces hard, eyes burning. Force said quietly. The response came from every throat in the fleet, broadcast across thousands of ships, spoken by 2 million voices as one. 4. The fleet engaged its engines and vanished into hyperspace. The galaxy's nightmare was about to begin. Governor stood in his garden, admiring the purple flowers that grew beneath the twin suns of IV. He was an old, nearly 500 years old, and he had spent the last century turning this world into the breadbasket of the hegemony. Billions of his people depended on the food grown here. It was a peaceful morning. The sky was clear. The workers were in the fields. The transport ships were loading in orbit, preparing to carry the harvest to 100 different worlds. Then the alarms began to scream. Looked up and saw fire falling from the sky. The first wave of human ships hit IV without warning. They came out of hyperspace inside the planet's defensive perimeter, bypassing the orbital stations and the patrol fleets. By the time the commanders understood what was happening, it was already too late. Commander stood on the bridge of the Retribution, watching the planet grow larger on her screen. She felt nothing. No excitement, no fear, no mercy. "Launch the Prometheus Lance," she ordered. The weapon was new. It had never been used before. The scientists who built it had hoped it would never need to be used. But they had built it anyway, because humanity had learned long ago that hope was not enough. The lance was not a bomb. It was something worse. It was a machine designed to cause a chain reaction in a planet's core. The molten iron at the center of the world would destabilize, creating earthquakes and volcanic eruptions that would tear the surface apart. The device fell toward IV, invisible against the darkness of space. It hit the surface and burrowed deep into the ground. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the planet began to shake. Governor felt the ground move beneath his feet. The purple flowers trembled. The twin suns seemed to dance in the sky. He fell to his knees, struggling to understand what was happening. Across the planet, the same scene played out in a million different places. Fields split open. Buildings collapsed. Mountains crumbled into valleys. The ocean boiled as volcanic vents erupted from them. In orbit, the human fleet watched in silence. There was no celebration, no cheering, just cold, professional observation as 4 billion lives came to an end. Recorded the final moments for her commanders. "Prometheus Lance effective," she said. "Target is no longer habitable. Estimated time until complete surface destruction, 6 hours." She paused, looking at the dying world on her screen. Moving to next target. The news reached the Eternal Accord 12 hours later. High Arbiter was in his chambers when his senior advisor burst through the door without permission. The look on the advisor's face told everything he needed to know. "IV is gone," the advisor said. "The planet is dead. There are no survivors." Felt the blood drain from his face. "That is not possible. IV had defensive stations. It had patrol fleets. How did the humans?" "They bypassed everything. They came out of hyperspace inside the defense grid. They launched a weapon we have never seen before." The advisor's hands were shaking. "High Arbiter, the planet is not just damaged. It is gone. The crust is breaking apart. Within a day, there will be nothing left." Sat down heavily. His mind refused to accept what he was hearing. 4 billion people. The agricultural center of the hegemony, gone in a matter of hours. "How many ships?" he asked. "How many ships did it take?" The advisor checked his tablet. "Our sensors counted approximately 200. They did not engage our defensive forces. They simply ignored them." "Call an emergency council session," ordered, "immediately." The council chamber was chaos. Representatives from every species were shouting at each other, demanding answers, assigning blame. Some called for immediate counterattacks. Others wanted to negotiate. A few simply sat in stunned silence, unable to process what had happened. Stood at his podium and tried to restore order. "The humans have made a mistake," he said. "They have shown us what they can do, but they have also revealed their presence. Now we can hunt them down and destroy them." "With what?" shouted a general. "They destroyed an entire world with 200 ships. 200. We have thousands of worlds, but if they can strike anywhere at any time." Then we defend everywhere, said. We spread our forces across every vulnerable target. That will stretch us thin, said an advisor. Too thin, they could pick us apart one by one. Before could respond, a communication officer rushed into the chamber. High Arbiter, we have lost contact with 3 more worlds. The shouting stopped. Every eye turned to the officer. Which worlds? Asked quietly. Station, the mining colony, and the officer swallowed hard, and the shipyard at Horizon's Edge. Felt his knees go weak. Horizon's Edge produced 1/4 of all warships. Without it, the hegemony could not replace its losses. And the humans had destroyed it without a single warning. Over the next weeks, the pattern became terrifyingly clear. The humans were not fighting a war. They were conducting an extermination. They did not engage enemy fleets. They avoided them entirely, using hyperspace jumps to bypass defensive lines and strike directly at vulnerable targets. They attacked supply depots, destroying the food and fuel that kept the Council's military running. They bombed communication stations, cutting off entire sectors from the central command. They poisoned water supplies and released engineered viruses that spread through alien populations like fire. And they did not stop. Admiral coordinated the campaign from his flagship, which never stayed in one place for more than a few hours. He received reports from dozens of different battle groups, each one operating independently across a vast area of space. We are not trying to win battles, he reminded his commanders. We are trying to destroy civilizations. Every factory we eliminate, every farm we burn, every shipyard we wreck is a step toward our goal. Do not waste time fighting their military. Make their military irrelevant by destroying everything it was meant to protect. The strategy was brutal but effective. The Council's forces were designed for conventional warfare. They expected to fight great battles, to maneuver fleets against fleets, to negotiate and threaten, and eventually win through superior numbers. They had no answer for an enemy that refused to fight. In the Empire, a famous general named organized a massive fleet to hunt down the human ships. He assembled 500 of his best warships and tracked a human battle group to a remote system. When he arrived, he found nothing but empty space. The humans had already left, and while his fleet was hunting shadows, another human force had attacked his orbital defenses. Received the news via emergency transmission. His wife and children were dead. His ancestral home was rubble, and the humans were already gone, moving to their next target. He sat alone in his command center for a long time. Then he recorded a message for the Council. We cannot win this war, he said simply. Not like this. The humans do not fight like soldiers. They fight like predators. They strike and disappear. They have no honor, no rules, no mercy. Every time we gather our forces to face them, they attack somewhere else. He paused, his old face heavy with grief. I have served the Empire for 200 years. I have never lost a battle, but I am losing this war, and I do not know how to stop it. The message was shared across the Council, and it sent shockwaves through every species. If the undefeated could not stop the humans, who could? Commander led her Vengeance fleet deeper into space. They moved like ghosts, avoiding major fleet concentrations and striking at soft targets. They attacked colony worlds and industrial centers. They destroyed space stations and mining operations. They left nothing behind but fire and ash. In her quarters, the recording of execution still played on its endless loop. Watched it sometimes, late at night when she could not sleep. She watched smile. She watched the crowd cheer. And she felt the cold certainty that drove her forward. One day, a young officer came to her with a question that many had wondered about but none had dared to ask. Commander, the colonies we have been attacking. There are civilians there, families, children, he swallowed. How do we make peace with what we are doing? Looked at him for a long moment. He was 23 years old. He had joined the Navy because he wanted to see the stars. Now he was helping to burn them. We do not make peace with it, she said quietly. What we are doing is evil. There is no other word for it. We are killing innocents because their leaders killed one of ours. That is not justice. It is not right. Then why do we do it? Turned back to the screen, where was dying again and again. Because if we do not, they will do it to us. The Council has already shown us what they think of human life. They executed our ambassador for asking for peace. They cheered while she died. If we show weakness now, if we hold back, they will destroy us all. She faced the young officer again. This is not about revenge. This is not about anger. This is about survival. We are making ourselves so terrible, so monstrous, that no one will ever dare threaten humanity again. We are paying a price that will haunt us forever, but our children will be safe. Our will never have to watch their leaders die on alien screens. The officer was silent. I know it is not enough, said. I know it does not make us feel better, but it is the truth. We are soldiers. We do what must be done. And one day when this is over, we will have to live with what we have become. She dismissed him and turned back to the stars. On the Eternal Accord was slowly losing his grip on power. The other council species blamed the for provoking the humans. They blamed specifically for ordering execution. Old alliances were crumbling. Old resentments were rising to the surface. 3 months after IV, they announced their withdrawal from the council. They sent a message to human space, begging for mercy, offering to provide information about defensive positions in exchange for peace. The humans did not respond. 2 days later, there was attacked, not as severely as Worlds, but enough to show that there would be no exceptions. Every species that had been part of the council was guilty. Every species that had voted for death would share her fate. The message was clear. There would be no negotiation. There would be no separate peace. The council would stand or fall together. And it was falling. Refugee fleets filled the space lanes. Billions of people fled from their homes, hopping to find safety somewhere, anywhere. But there was nowhere to go. The humans seemed to be everywhere at once, striking from every direction. In the chaos, old conflicts returned. Species that had been at peace for centuries began fighting each other for resources and territory. The Council's carefully maintained order was breaking down. Civilization itself seemed to be crumbling. And still the humans came. On the bridge of the Unity, Admiral reviewed the latest reports. His forces had destroyed over 200 worlds. The hegemony had lost half its territory. The Empire was tearing itself apart in civil war. The other council species were begging for mercy. His aide approached him with a message. Sir, we have received a communication from High Arbiter. He is requesting a meeting. He says he wants to negotiate. Did not look up from his reports. What are his terms? He is offering full reparations for Ambassador's death. He is willing to give us trade agreements, territory, recognition as equals. He says the council will issue a formal apology. Was silent for a long moment, then he looked at his aide. 4 months ago, a woman went to those people and offered them friendship. She asked for nothing but peace, and they killed her while the galaxy watched. He returned to his reports. Tell that we are not interested in apologies. Tell him that the time for negotiation was before he murdered our ambassador. Tell him that we will not stop until the council no longer exists. The aide hesitated. Sir, if we continue this campaign, we will be responsible for the deaths of trillions. I know. History will call us monsters. I know that too. Finally looked up. His eyes were empty like a man who had already died. But our children will be alive to hear that history. That is all that matters now. He turned back to the stars. Send the message and prepare the fleet. We are going to prime. The war was far from over. The galaxy's nightmare had only just begun. 6 months after the first attack, the galaxy was unrecognizable. The maps that diplomats had used for centuries were now useless. Entire civilizations had been reduced to scattered remnants. Proud empires that had ruled for thousands of years were now fighting for survival. The order that had maintained peace across the stars was gone, replaced by chaos and fear. And at the center of it all, humanity kept advancing. On the Eternal Accord, the remaining council members gathered for what everyone knew might be their final meeting. The great chamber that had once echoed with the voices of galactic leaders was now half empty. Some species had been destroyed. Others had fled to distant corners of space. A few had simply disappeared, their fate unknown. High Arbiter sat in his seat, looking older than he ever had before. His pale blue skin had turned gray. His 4 arms trembled slightly. The golden eyes that had once burned with confidence were now hollow. "We must find a way to stop them," said a delegate, one of the few who remained. "Every day more of our worlds burn. Every day more of our people die." "How?" asked a representative. "We have tried military responses. We have tried negotiations. We have tried surrendering. Nothing works. They will not stop." Spoke slowly as if each word cost him effort. "They have made their intentions clear. They will not rest until we are extinct, until the council is nothing but ash." "Then we must appeal to the neutral powers," said the species that were not part of the council. "They have no quarrel with the humans. Perhaps they can mediate." "We already tried," the said bitterly. "Do you know what they told us? They said they remember the broadcast. They remember how we cheered when the human ambassador died. They said they will not interfere because they do not want to share our fate." The chamber fell silent. There was nothing left to say. On the other side of the galaxy, Admiral received a report that made him pause for the first time in months. "They are evacuating there," his intelligence officer told him. "They are moving civilians to transport ships, millions of them. They seem to be heading for the outer systems." Studied the data carefully. "They are trying to preserve their species. They know we are coming and they want to save what they can." "Should we intercept the transports?" Was quiet for a long time. For 6 months, he had ordered the destruction of countless worlds. He had watched billions of lives end at his command. He had become exactly the monster the galaxy feared. But there were still lines he had not crossed, not yet. "No," he said finally. "Let them go. We are not here to exterminate every last member of their species. We are here to destroy their power, their government, their ability to ever threaten us again. If some of them survive in refugee camps on distant moons, that is acceptable." His officer nodded, but there was a question in his eyes. "Sir, if we let them survive, won't they rebuild eventually? Won't they come for revenge?" Shook his head. "They will not. The lesson we are teaching is too thorough. They will tell their children and their what happened here. They will tell them that humanity is not to be touched. The memory of this war will last forever." He turned back to the tactical display. "Now prepare the fleet. Prime is waiting." Prime was the heart of the hegemony. It was one of the oldest inhabited worlds in the galaxy, home to 20 billion people and centuries of culture and history. Great cities covered its surface. Monuments to ancient heroes reached toward the sky. Libraries held knowledge gathered over. When the human fleet arrived, it was met by the largest defensive force they had ever assembled. 3,000 warships formed a wall between the humans and there. Every able-bodied citizen had been given weapons. Every building had been fortified. They were prepared to fight to the last. But the humans did not attack immediately. Instead, they stopped at the edge of the system and waited. For 3 days, nothing happened. They watched their sensors, expecting death at any moment. But the human ships just hung in space, silent and patient. Then a message came. "This is Fleet Admiral James of the United Earth Expeditionary Force. I wish to speak with High Arbiter." The message was relayed to the Eternal Accord, where sat alone in his chambers. He stared at the communication screen for a long time before accepting the call. face appeared before him. The human admiral looked tired. His hair had gone completely white over the past 6 months. Lines of exhaustion marked his dark skin, but his eyes were steady and his voice was calm. "High Arbiter," he said, "we have not spoken before." "No," replied, "we have not. I wanted to give you this opportunity before the end, to speak to the person who started all of this." Felt a flash of his old anger. "I did not start this. I made a decision to protect my people. Your species was a threat. Your ambassador was a spy." "No," said, "she was not, and you know it." The two leaders stared at each other across the vast distance of space. "Ambassador was a mother," continued. "She had 3 children, 1 daughter and 2 sons. When she left for this mission, her youngest son made her promise to come home. She planned to keep that promise. She genuinely believed she could build a bridge between our peoples." He paused. "Her name was, she loved to play the piano. She collected books from every country on earth. She had a laugh that could fill a room. She was brave and smart and kind." Said nothing. "You never knew her name, did you?" asked. "You never cared who she was. To you, she was just a primitive, an inconvenience, a message to be sent." "She was dangerous," said. "Your species is dangerous. I did what I had to do." "No," said quietly. "You did what was easy. You chose fear over understanding. You chose violence over peace. And now your empire is burning, your people are dying, and you have no one to blame but yourself." Felt tears forming in his eyes. He blinked them away, refusing to show weakness. "What do you want?" he asked. "Why did you call me?" "I wanted to offer you a choice," said. "Your defensive fleet is impressive, but we both know it cannot stop us. We have weapons that can destroy your planet in hours. If we wanted to, we could end your species tonight." "Then do it," said. "Get it over with." Shook his head. "That is not what I want. Despite everything, I am not a monster, or at least I am trying not to be, so I am offering you a choice." He leaned forward. "Surrender. Dissolve the Galactic Council. Acknowledge your crimes against humanity and accept our terms. If you do this, we will stop our advance. We will not destroy your species will survive." Stared at him, "And if I refuse?" "Then Prime dies. And after that, every remaining colony. And after that, we will hunt your refugees across the galaxy until there is nothing left. Not a single member of your species. Not a single record of your existence. You will be erased so completely that future generations will wonder if you ever existed at all." The words hung in the air between them. "You would commit genocide," said. "You would kill 20 billion innocent people to punish me." "Yes," said, "if you force me to. That is the choice you gave us when you executed our ambassador. You taught us that our lives mean nothing to the galaxy. Now we are teaching you what our deaths will cost." Closed his eyes. He saw the faces of his people, the children who played in the streets of his capital, the old ones who had lived through centuries of peace, the young ones who had never known war. All of them dead because of a decision he had made. "If I surrender," he said slowly, "my people will hate me. History will remember me as the coward who ended the hegemony." "Perhaps," said, "but they will be alive to hate you. Their children will be alive to forget you. That is more than many species will have when this is over." Opened his eyes. For a long moment he did not speak. Then slowly he lowered his head. "What are your terms?" The surrender was broadcast across the galaxy. Appeared on every screen, his face gray, his voice broken. He admitted that the execution of Ambassador had been unjust. He acknowledged that the Council had been wrong to dismiss humanity as primitives. He announced the dissolution of the Galactic Council and the end of rule over other species. And he begged. For the first time in his long life, High Arbiter begged. "Please," he said, his voice cracking. "Spare my people, spare our children. We were wrong, we were so wrong. Please show us the mercy we owe." The transmission ended, and the galaxy waited. On the bridge of the Unity, Admiral watched the message with his officers. Some of them wanted to reject the surrender. They had lost friends and family in this war. They had committed acts that would haunt them forever. They deserved to see it through to the end. But shook his head. "This is enough," he said. "We have broken them. We have shown the galaxy what happens to those who harm humanity. If we continue now, we become everything they accused us of being. We become the monsters they feared." He gave the order to stand down. The Vengeance fleet stopped its advance. Human ships across the galaxy held their positions. For the first time in 6 months, the fires of war began to fade. But not everyone accepted the peace. On the Eternal Accord, a group of younger council members had watched surrender with rage. They saw it as the final betrayal, the great hegemony brought to its knees by primitives. They could not accept it. A young officer named gathered a small group of loyalists. They believed that if they could strike a blow against the humans, if they could kill enough of them, the galaxy would rise again. The council would return. Order would be restored. They planned to attack the Unity directly, a suicide mission aimed at the heart of humanity's leadership. Their ships launched without authorization, burning toward the human flagship at maximum speed, sent a final message to his followers across the galaxy. The hegemony does not surrender. The council will never die, for glory, for honor, for... He never finished the sentence. Commander was in the area, returning from a mission. She detected the attacking ships and understood their intentions immediately. Without waiting for orders, she moved to intercept. "All units weapons free," she said calmly. "Protect the flagship." The battle lasted less than 10 minutes, and his followers were good pilots, but they were outnumbered and, one by one, their ships were destroyed. Not a single one reached the Unity. Watch the last ship explode on her screen. She felt nothing, no satisfaction, no relief, just emptiness. "Commander," her communications officer said, "Admiral is calling." She accepted the call. His face appeared on her screen. "Commander, thank you for your quick response." "Just doing my duty, sir." Studied her face for a moment. "How are you, really?" Was quiet for a long time. "I do not know, sir. I have done things in this war that I never imagined I could do. I have killed. I do not even know how many. Billions, maybe. All because a woman I never met was murdered by people she was trying to help." She looked at her hands. "I keep the video playing in my quarters, the execution. I watch it every night. I tell myself it is so I do not forget why we are fighting, but the truth is, I think it is the only thing keeping me sane. The only thing that makes what we did acceptable." Nodded slowly. "I understand. I have my own videos, my own ghosts." "Will it ever stop hurting?" asked. "No," said honestly. "It will not, but one day you will realize that the hurt is worth it. Our children are safe. Our will never know this fear. The price we paid was terrible, but it was not for nothing." Nodded, though she did not entirely believe him. "Get some rest," Commander said. "The war is almost over. Soon we can go home." The transmission ended, and sat alone on her bridge. Home. She had almost forgotten what that word meant. Across the galaxy, the remaining council species began to surrender. One by one, they acknowledged humanity's terms. They dissolved their governments, opened their borders, and accepted their new place in the galactic order. Some species were almost gone. They had lost half their population. They had collapsed into civil war and would take generations to recover. Others had been reduced to scattered colonies, their great civilizations nothing but memories. But they were alive. That was more than many had expected. On the Eternal Accord, sat in his chambers and waited for the humans to come. He had surrendered his power, his authority, his legacy. He had nothing left. When the door opened, he expected soldiers. He expected to be executed just as he had executed. Instead, a single officer entered, a human woman in a worn uniform, with eyes that had seen too much death. "High Arbiter," said Commander, "by order of the United Earth Expeditionary Force, you are hereby placed under arrest for crimes against humanity." Looked at her. "Are you here to kill me?" "No," said, "you will be tried, you will face justice. Real justice, not the kind you offered, Ambassador." And then shrugged, "That will be for the court to decide. But I suspect you will spend the rest of your life in a cell watching videos of what your arrogance cost the galaxy." She gestured to the guards behind her. "Take him." As was led away, he passed a window that looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, Prime still orbited its sun. His people still lived. His species still existed. It was more than he deserved. He knew that now. The war was over. The galaxy had learned fear, and humanity had become something new, something terrible, something that would never be threatened again. 1 year after the execution of Ambassador, the galaxy was still trying to understand what had happened. The great powers that had ruled were gone. The Galactic Council, that ancient institution that had maintained order across the stars, no longer existed. In its place was something new, something that everyone was still learning to understand. Humanity had not claimed the throne. They had not tried to rule the galaxy or build an empire of their own. Instead, they had simply made their position clear. They were not above anyone. They were not below anyone. They were equal, and any species that forgot that lesson would face the same fate as the Council. Admiral James stood on the observation deck of the Eternal Accord, looking out at the stars. The great station had been converted into a memorial and a meeting place. Where once the Council had gathered to decide the fate of worlds, now representatives from across the galaxy came to talk, to trade, and to remember. He was 63 now, though he felt much older. The past year had taken everything from him: his health, his peace of mind, his ability to sleep through the night, but he had done what was necessary. He had kept his people safe. A soft footstep behind him announced the arrival of President Wei. She had aged too. Her hair was completely white now, and she walked with a cane. The stress of the war had broken something inside her. "Admiral," she said, "they are ready for you." Nodded. The speech. The speech. They walked together through corridors that had once belonged to their enemies. Guards stood at attention as they passed. Human soldiers, yes, but also members of other species. The neutral powers that had stayed out of the war had formed new relationships with humanity. They saw what humans could do, and they chose to be friends rather than enemies. Smart choice, thought. The ceremony was held in the main chamber where had died. The room had been rebuilt, redesigned, and rededicated. Where once there had been seats for the 12 council species, now there were seats for everyone. Every species in the galaxy had been invited. Every voice would be heard. At the center of the chamber stood a statue. It was made of white stone, carved by the finest artists on Earth. It showed a woman with her hand extended, reaching out in a gesture of friendship. Forever frozen in the moment before her death. Approached the podium that had been set up before the statue. Cameras floated in the air, broadcasting his image to every corner of the galaxy. Billions of beings watched, humans and aliens alike. He looked at its face for a long moment, then he began to speak. 1 year ago, a woman came to this station with a dream. She believed that humanity could join the galactic community in peace. She believed that if we showed our good intentions, if we offered friendship and cooperation, we would be welcomed as equals. He paused. She was wrong. The chamber was silent. Ambassador was murdered on this very spot. She was killed for the crime of being human, for the crime of coming from a world that other species feared, for the crime of daring to ask for peace. His voice hardened. The beings who killed her thought they were sending a message. They thought they were teaching humanity its place. They thought we would crawl away in fear and accept our role as inferior creatures in their galaxy. He shook his head slowly. They did not understand us. They did not understand what we are. They did not understand what we are capable of when someone harms one of our own. He turned to face the cameras directly. I am not here to apologize for what happened next. The war we fought was terrible. The things we did were terrible. Billions died. Civilizations fell. The galaxy will be recovering for generations. But I want to be clear about something. We did not choose this war. We did not want it. We came in peace and we were answered with blood. Every death, every destroyed world, every shattered civilization is the responsibility of those who murdered. They started this. We finished it. He looked out at the assembled representatives. To the species that were part of the council, you have paid a heavy price for the actions of your leaders. Many of you have lost your homes, your families, your entire way of life. I know you hate us. I know you fear us. That is understandable. But I want you to know that the war is over. Humanity does not seek revenge. We do not want to rule over you or control you. We want what we always wanted, to live in peace among the stars. He gestured towards the statue. She would have wanted that. Even after everything that happened, even after the way she died, I believe would have wanted us to find a way forward together. She believed in the possibility of friendship. She believed that different species could learn to understand each other. I cannot bring her back. I cannot undo what was done, but I can honor her memory by trying to build the future she dreamed of. Took a deep breath. From this day forward, humanity offers the galaxy a choice. You can be our enemies and face the consequences, or you can be our friends and share in the benefits. We will not force anyone to join us. We will not demand submission or tribute. We ask only for respect, mutual respect between equals. His voice dropped lower. But I will also make one thing absolutely clear. We will not tolerate any threat to our people. Any species that raises a hand against humanity, that harms a single human being without cause, will face the same fate as the Council. Not war, not defeat, erasure. He let those words hang in the air. You called us, you were right. We evolved on a world that was constantly trying to kill us. We are strong because we had to be. We are dangerous because we had no choice. But we are also capable of great kindness, great creativity, and great love. The question is, which side of humanity do you want to see? The side that builds or the side that destroys? The choice is yours. Stepped back from the podium. This memorial stands in honor of. Every species that visits this station will see her face. They will remember her name, and they will know that her death was paid for in full. May we never have to pay such a price again. The ceremony ended in silence. There was no applause, no celebration, just a deep, profound understanding that the galaxy had changed forever. In the days that followed, representatives from dozens of species came to speak with the human delegation. Some came to make peace. Others came to form alliances. A few even came to apologize, though those apologies felt hollow after everything that had happened. Commander was among the officers assigned to the station. She walked its corridors every day, passing by the memorial, looking into the stone eyes of the woman she had avenged. One morning, she found a young standing before the statue. He was barely more than a child, with pale blue skin and golden eyes that reminded her painfully of. But where had been arrogant and cruel, this young one looked only sad. She was beautiful, the young said. He spoke in halting English, probably learned from translation programs. The human ambassador, she looked kind. Stood beside him. She was kind. That is what the history books say anyway. I was not born when it happened, the young one continued. The execution, but I have seen the recordings. We all have. They show them in our schools now, to teach us what our leaders did, what it cost us. He looked at with those golden eyes. I am sorry for what they did, for what you had to do in response. Was silent for a long moment. This was the first time an alien had apologized to her directly. She did not know how to feel about it. "What is your name?" she asked. She repeated it slowly. "You are too young to have been part of what happened. You do not need to apologize for the actions of others." "But I am," said. "My species did this. That means I carry some responsibility, does it not?" Shook her head. "No, that is not how it works. You are not guilty of your ancestors' crimes. You are only responsible for your own choices." She looked at Statue. The war happened because people could not see past species. They saw humans and decided we were all dangerous. We saw aliens and decided you were all guilty. Neither side tried to see individuals. Neither side tried to find common ground. She turned back to, "If we want things to be different, we have to start seeing each other as people, not as species, not as categories, just people trying to survive in a vast and often cruel universe." Nodded slowly. "I would like that. I would like to be seen as just myself." Smiled. It was a small smile, the first she had managed in months. "Then maybe there is hope for us after all." The months passed, and slowly, painfully, the galaxy began to heal. Human colonies reopened their borders. Trade routes were established. Scientists from different species began working together, sharing knowledge that had been kept secret for. The universe was becoming smaller, more connected, more united. Not everyone accepted the new order. There were rebellions, terrorist attacks, assassination attempts. Some species could not forgive what humanity had done. Some humans could not forgive what had been done to them. The scars of the war would take generations to fade. But the worst was over. The killing had stopped. And for the first time since had set out on her mission, there was genuine hope for the future. On Earth, in a small house in Argentina, a young man named Daniel celebrated his 11th birthday. He was no longer the crying child who had begged his mother to come home. He had grown older, quieter, more serious than a boy his age should be. His father watched him from across the room. The past year had been hard on all of them. Sophia, now 17, had become an activist, spending her time organizing memorials and speaking out against xenophobia. Himself had aged 20 years in 12 months. But they were together. They were alive, and they kept memory alive in everything they did. Daniel opened his birthday present. It was a small model of a starship, carefully painted by hand. He looked at it with something approaching joy. "Thank you, Papa," he said. Knelt beside his son. "Your mother wanted you to see the stars someday. She believed that the universe was full of wonders and that humanity deserved to experience them all." Daniel looked at the model, turning it over in his hands. Do you think she would be proud of us, of what we did after she died?" It was a difficult question. Had asked it of himself many times. The war had been terrible. Billions had died because of execution. Would she have wanted that? Would she have approved of the vengeance taken in her name? He did not know. He would never know. "I think," he said slowly, "that your mother would want us to move forward. She would want us to take what happened and use it to build something better. She would want us to prove that her death meant something." He hugged his son. "And I think she would want you to see those stars, to go out into the universe and find the wonders she believed in, to be the kind of person who reaches out in friendship, even when it is hard, even when it is scary." Daniel nodded against his father's shoulder. "I will try, Papa. I will try to make her proud." On the Eternal Accord, a year to the day after his death, a final ceremony was held. Representatives from every species in the galaxy gathered in the memorial chamber. For the first time there was no tension, no fear, no anger, just quiet reflection. Admiral stood before statue one last time. He was retiring after this, returning to Earth, trying to find whatever peace remained for a man who had done what he had done. He placed a single flower at the base of the statue. It was from Earth, grown in a garden on the other side of the galaxy. a small piece of home for a woman who never made it back. "Rest now," he said quietly. "Your work is done. Humanity is safe. The galaxy has learned its lesson." He touched the cold stone of her face. "I hope you can forgive us for what we became. I hope you understand that we had no choice. And I hope that wherever you are, you can see what you helped create." He stepped back, joining the assembled representatives. Together, humans and aliens alike, they observed a moment of silence, for the billions who had died, for the future they were trying to build. Then slowly they began to talk, not as enemies, not as conquered and conqueror, just as people sharing stories, making plans, dreaming of what might be. Outside the station, the stars burned cold and bright. The galaxy was vast and ancient and full of dangers, but humanity was part of it now, not as primitives, not as threats, as equals. And somewhere in the space between stars, where the souls of the dead were said to rest, a woman smiled. She had gone to the galaxy seeking peace. She had found only death. But in the end, her death had created something her life never could: a galaxy united, a humanity respected, a future worth fighting for. Had made her promise to come home. She had broken it in the worst way possible, but perhaps in the end she had kept it after all. She had given her children a universe to inherit, and the galaxy would never forget her name.